All right, looks good. All right, so this has been coming up more and more in the feeds. The average level of American education. Uh, Speaking about like the average reading level of the average adult is well, the meme that I've been seeing that says sixth grade. This overview here says seventh to eighth grade, which I'm guessing means it's pulling from more sources. It's aggregating more results. For those who don't know what aggregating means, it means it's going to a whole bunch of different sources, getting the results from all of them, and bringing them into one location. So if you're getting a lot of news from like one site where they're not producing the news themselves, but they're putting a bunch of stuff from like AP out there and a bunch of other different areas, different websites and such, they're aggregating their news. All right, so hopefully that explains what that term is. Given that the average reading level in the United States is seventh to eighth grade, I'm guessing a lot of people probably didn't know what that meant. Although you may have heard the term. So that's what the term means. It just means that something's going out there and getting a bunch of information. Usually they're using tools or bots that have been created to go out to all these different sites and grab a bunch of information. And a lot of times they're going to have settings that they choose which information they want to have available to them, or they'll pick and choose which ones come in as to which they're going to publish. So there will usually be a filter or somebody manually picking and choosing what they're going to use through that aggregation tool. But yeah, the average reading level being seventh to eighth grade seems pretty legitimate. Huge bummer, honestly. Like, I don't know. I've been a huge reader since I was a little dude. Any of my teachers would tell you instantly that they couldn't keep me out of books. My mom would tell you they couldn't keep me out of books when I was a kid. By the time I was in fifth grade, I was reading books that were, meant for people with college level educations, advanced educations as far as their comprehension level of reading, understanding words. I'm probably one of the only people I know who's ever been written up at work for using big words. That's a real true story. I got pulled into the back, and I was talked to because I left notes for my teams using what I thought was normal words. I wasn't thinking about it when I wrote it. I just wrote what the thoughts as they came to me, stream of conscious, as far as what I expected them to get done the next day. And I got into work and I was pulled into the back office and literally written up because I used big words, and it was the insinuation that I was using those words intentionally, like intentionally going and picking out words that I thought would be difficult for the people to comprehend, and was using that to insult their intelligence. Probably the craziest thing that's ever happened to me as far as like absolute like absurdity. Um, like who would do that? I'm like just literally look at anything I've ever written anywhere, and there's a smattering of words that are similar. So I don't think of words as big or small. I just think of them as words. Either I know what they are or I don't know what they are. Um, some people may not know what some of those words are, I guess. If they don't, you can always ask. Most people who have a greater vocabulary don't like, they have no real pretense about like shitting on people because they don't know those words. So don't think that. I never think that if somebody's using big words that they're doing so to insult you. A lot of times they don't think of them as big words; they just think of them as a word. It's what popped into their brain. Um, it just is what it is. And there's no shame in asking about a word, or go look it up later. You know, like you don't even have to spell it out anymore. You can literally, say, "Hey Google" or whatever, and ask it what a word means. And as long as you can repeat what the word sounded like, you're probably going to get your answer. So, like, it's not even the challenge that it used to be, where you were like, "Fuck, that was a big word," and I don't even know how you would spell that word. That's crazy. Who would tie all these crazy letters together? Some bastard who just wants to win at Scrabble. But yeah, it's nuts. It's really disheartening to know that the majority of the United States does have that seventh to eighth grade education when it comes to reading, and that's comprehension. That's usually here's the real part that sticks me with this is that usually if people have a degree of comprehension as far as reading, their ability to write and thus communicate, and even in speech form, is usually lower than that by a little bit, because you can understand things that people write that would normally be something that you couldn't say, but you can. It's put into context. You can figure things out. So it's actually easier to read at a certain level than it is to speak or to communicate in writing at a certain level. Teenage daughters, am I right? They're loud. I have my gate set pretty high, so. And let's see. Adults, 21% of adults in the U.S. are illiterate. Once again, it doesn't really shock me or surprise me, but it's really sad. Like how, like if this isn't the indicator to not use mailers in your political campaigns, don't send stuff out in mails. Don't rely on billboards and memes, because if 21% of that's one in every five people. Uh, that's 54% having a literacy rate below sixth grade, and 45 million are what they would call functioning illiterate, meaning that they can read so little stuff, they can comprehend so little of what they see written down, that they are basically illiterate. So yeah, mailers, anything that you're writing down to try to convince people of things. I encounter this again and again in a lot of online debates. I'm not, again, I'm not using any kind of specific wording. I'm just writing my train of thought. And then I see people who are just struggling to understand what it is I'm writing. And I have to try to figure out how to figure out where they are on the ability to comprehend things. What words I can use, what thought processes I can try to invoke to get them to understand what it is I'm trying to communicate. And it can be difficult. But that doesn't mean we obviously don't do that. I would never tell somebody that I just don't care enough about what they think or how they feel to not try to communicate with them. I absolutely want to communicate and understand other people. I may not always like what I come to understand, but I always do want to understand and try to create that bridge, to create that understanding back and forth. Um, High school graduates, 19% of high school graduates in the U.S. can't even read. Again, I think that's part of the. I would have to see stats going back before, like, No Child Left Behind. I would say a good portion of this is due to No Child Left Behind. Primitive pixels ready to be refilled. Cool. But yeah, the rewarding schools for graduating students without having any kind of oversight that verifies whether or not those students actually have the ability to read or comprehend that information, or to utilize that information. Like, even better than being able to read the information and repeat it is the ability to apply that information. That's one of the things that I hate about standardized testing, is it's memorizing things, copying notes, filling up bubbles. Better testing methods are having them apply that information that they've learned and that they've read, and being able to summarize things, be it essay format or any kind of practical application to it. Those are obviously much better ways. This is why I normally stream much earlier in the day, why everybody's not here. You can hear them in the background, um, and they're up all hours of the night. But yeah, like, I'm trying to find the sweet spot in the gate here. Check 1 2 1 2. Well, check 1 2 1 2. Hopefully that works. I'm going to be kind of close to the microphone, so it's going to sound a little bit different maybe than it did before, but it is what it is. We're going to make it work. Um, Inmates. A lot of the inmates in prison can't read above fourth grade level. Always been an indicator of people why they turn to a life of crime, and it's one of the reasons why there's so much advocacy for better education systems in poorer communities, a lot of inner city communities, but not just inner city. Anybody who thinks that, like, oh, this is all like urban stuff is not paying attention to the actual stats, or they don't know the actual stats. You get plenty of folks who are in prison who are from rural communities as well. A lot of rural schools did a terrible job of teaching. Back in the day, it was, and to be fair, it was a very community oriented thing. People just were trying to be good to people that they, spent their time with outside and outside of the community. They didn't want to see or treat people in the community like they were failures or make them feel like they were less than the other students. So that's always a negative as well. So it's not just No Child Left Behind. It's people trying to make people feel better about the fact that they're not able to measure to the same standard that other students can. Um, and it's kind of sad that we have that. Mm, as a student who excelled for a very long time and was pulled out of you know a situation that was allowing me to excel, I was placed into you know normal classes, and then anytime I was excelling, like just for instance, I was in a graphic arts class, just something that's a little bit more attainable for more people, right? In that class, I would be working on, because they gave us the syllabus ahead of time, and I had been working with Adobe Photoshop since forever. As soon as my parents got a computer and it was on there by default as like a demo, I think it was, and I was way ahead of the class, doing advanced stuff, and I would actually get docked points because the work I was doing was too advanced, and I was told to stick to the lesson plan. I'm like, but the thing that I did included exactly what you guys did in the lesson plan, and I had all this extra time on my hands, so I applied some more advanced techniques that was fun. Um, and you docked me points for that, and like the stuff like that doesn't it doesn't make sense. It's like punishing people for being greater than what you're asking for, and that sets a bad stigma in people. Same thing happens in other classes, reading classes, so whatnot. They're like, don't read ahead of the class. If they can read that quickly and comprehend the information, let them read ahead of the class. If they're going to get bored and then go on to other things, whatever the case may be, but don't punish people for excelling. And if you have students who need extra help, absolutely. This is one of the reasons why there's advocacy for one, less students per teacher, and two, more teachers in each classroom, like two teachers per classroom. This allows a student helper or an assistant teacher, whatever the case may be, to work with somebody who needs the help more, or the teacher themselves can work with the people who need more help, while people who are excelling, who may have questions, can also attain help in their pursuits. Um, there should just be more opportunity for all students, regardless if they're above or below the curve, to get the attention they need to succeed. And there needs to be better ways of teaching. One of the problems that we see in the academic institutions is that um, you see teachers and you see students. You go to classes rather, and they're teaching like one method, and there's always arguments over which method is best. Math is a good example because it's a mechanical aspect to the learning, right? It's just numbers, and they behave a certain way, and there's certain ways that you can look at the logistics between how you perform um, your mathematical functions to get your answers right. So, I mean, they taught us one way for a long, long time. Other students, obviously, different people understood math differently. So you would figure out a way that it made sense to you. And then, of course, now there's Common Core, which doesn't make sense to too many people. We've all seen the, adding bananas to pears to get the number of rooftops over hippos memes out there. But yeah, there's different ways to perform math to get to the same result. There really is. And anybody who knows math well knows that you can do a number of basic equations different ways. There's different ways to break it down and do it. And some ways work better for some people, some ways work better for other people. Teachers always wanted you to write down your how you got there. But then if you were doing the math in a way that wasn't the approved way that they wanted you to be doing the math, then they would yell at you, even if the functions you were doing were absolutely correct and the result was correct. They would still dock you points because you were doing it incorrectly by what they wanted you to, by the method that they wanted you to use, even though your method is 100% valid. So it's things like that in the school system that are kind of busted. So I'm not just going to dump on people and say that them not understanding things or not being as well educated is their fault. I really don't think it is. I think most people, and I've argued this far too many times, I think, over the years, I think most people are actually really, really smart and have a lot of potential intellectually. I think, unfortunately, that we developed a system that doesn't reward them, that doesn't cater to people correctly, doesn't help them achieve the things that they could achieve. And I think that's ridiculous, honestly, that we created a system and we said, as long as the majority of people can get by with it, it's functionally the best system that we can come up with. When realistically, obviously, the best system we could come up with would have more teachers, and we would have more ways of reaching out to the different ways that people comprehend and understand things to help them have a better grasp. So if you learn this way, we have somebody who can teach you that way. If you learn a different way, we have somebody who can teach you that way. Because functionally, all that really matters in the end is that you understand and can apply that understanding. I had this argument with teachers in school. They would say, when I was having difficulty with my grades, because I wasn't turning in a lot of homework, and I'm like, well, yeah. They're like, well, you're not taking notes either. I said, nope, I don't really care for notes. I was reading books or whatever in class, not paying as much attention as they would have liked. But when it came time to take the test, I would do fantastic on the test. And they were always upset because they'd be like, well, you're doing this good on your test. You could obviously do the homework. I said, yeah, I probably could do the homework, but I forget to. I'm a bit scatterbrained that way. You can be brilliant and scatterbrained. It's not something, that they don't have to necessarily not exist together. They absolutely coexist quite frequently, as a matter of fact. But obviously, like what I said, what's the point of the school system? And the principal at the time said, what do you mean? I said, why do students come to school? What is the goal of a student coming to school? I said, insofar as I understand it, our point in coming to school is so that we can learn all this basic material and have a basic understanding to approach the rest of the world, whether we go on to college and further those individual understandings into things that we really, really want to pursue, so that we can have a career maybe in those fields later in life, or just because we're really interested in them, whatever the case may be. But what's the point of us coming to school? If it's just to prove that we can just do the assigned work and just be people who just take orders, that's a very different thing than coming here to be educated. And in my mind, if somebody's coming here and they are able to pass all of your tests without notes, they're not doing all the homework, so they're not getting all that extra, technically intellectual practice on those things to help better reinforce that information in their head. But they can still answer all of it. Not only can they answer, but they can answer it in their own words. So they comprehend and apply the information correctly in their own words. That would be, I would think, the achievement that we're here to get to. The student has assessed and attained that education and can apply that education. That would be the entire point of an educational system, to my mind. And they're like, well, no, you have to get, this is to prepare you for the real world. A phrase that I've heard far too many times in life. What is the real world? And I said, wait a minute. Okay, so this is to prepare me for the real world, not to educate me so that I have an education that I can utilize in the real world, but to prepare me for the real world by indoctrinating certain behaviorisms. One of those being homework. I said, how the hell is homework a part of the real world? And they were like, well, when you have a job, I'm like, yeah, because, both my parents who, as long as I know have worked full-time jobs, all their, since I was a little sprat anyway, they never brought homework home. And I'm not saying that there aren't careers out there where you do bring work home, but in no way is doing homework at a grade school level comparative, and in no way is somebody who didn't do homework in their grade school, would they ever go like, oh shit, I wasn't doing homework in middle school. I am not prepared for this. What is life? I can't deal. I mean, there's going to be homework in college. And college kids aren't obviously going to be thrown for a loop by the idea of homework either. It was such a disingenuous statement, and it's one that's used all the time, which is, that We're preparing you for the real world. No. All you're doing is trying. The homework thing is not to prepare you for the real world. It's to help people do more repetition on this information. So if you're struggling to understand it, hopefully it just gives you more time with that information to help you better remember it, to better recollect it. The more experiences you have with information, the more likely you are to retain that information. It's one of the reasons why when you're talking about things like propaganda, conditioning, even like, today's news media, they repeat things on loops constantly. You'll see the same things go down your news feed constantly. It's a portion of conditioning because they want you to remember those buzzwords, those memes, those statements. It's why you remember song lyrics or movie things or anything that you encounter frequently that is a part of your normal social life. Those things will pop into your head so fast and so easy because it's just stuff that's repeated constantly. And that's what homework is about. It's about repetition. It's about building that recognition in your head. What are the questions and what are the answers to those questions? And hopefully then when they give you those tests, that's still in there. So my point was like, okay, so I didn't need all of this repetition. I didn't need all of this. I have a genuine understanding of this material. I have a genuine understanding of the principles behind it. I could answer all of it without notes, without anything else. So we have a system that's literally designed to punish that, which is wild to me. Like, okay, this guy's wildly successful. This gal could be wildly successful academically, very, very intelligent. But we designed a system to punish them for not doing their homework, for not taking notes. Two things which are designed solely to help students make those achievements. So if you've achieved it without them, you're a wonderful success. And I'm gonna tell you right now, if somebody like or me, for instance, anytime I did have trouble remembering things or trying to understand the principles of something, I did write it down, or I would go look and do a bunch of research into it to try to understand it better. And that would be where I would become successful that way. So it's not like these people are without resources or the ability to retain information, even when it's challenging. They're going to find ways to do so. And for teachers to spend so much time focused on driving that home with students who are academically successful, as far as like, obviously you're testing them and they can understand and do the material, they understand it. You've achieved success with that student academically. So instead of focusing on punishing somebody for not taking notes or for not doing homework, if you have people who are doing all of their homework and are taking all of the notes and they're still struggling, don't focus on the kid who's very successful. Focus on the children who are struggling. It's more a bullying tactic at that point, just trying to assert authority over somebody who absolutely does not recognize authority in that regard, in that aspect. It's so goofy to exist that way and be like, oh no, you need to do things the way that we think you need to do things, even though you're achieving of all of the goals that we set forth. Meanwhile, this guy over here is just sweating and struggling, and you're going to be like, nah, he's just not as important because whatever. I don't know why that wouldn't be the focus. I would read books in class. Teachers would stop the class to come and yell at me, telling me that I was disturbing the class. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm over here just reading a book quietly. I'm not tapping my hands. I'm not, stomping my feet. I'm just reading a book. And you stopped the class to come and address me because I don't know if you felt disrespected or whatever the case may be. But if I was still successful on all your tests and retaining all of the information, I'm not your concern. Your concern needs to be with the student who is struggling right now, with the student who really, really needs you to not stop the class and to focus on what's going on. Me reading a book isn't pulling any student's attention. I don't know a single student in school who was watching the teacher talk about something and just couldn't pull their eyes away from the kid who was reading a book. They were like, oh, Jesus Christ, he's reading a Hardy Boy. I can't believe it. I have that one. I haven't gotten to that story yet. I hope he doesn't spoil it for me. These kids, they're not thinking about me. They're not thinking about the kid who's quietly doing something else in class. Their attention is on the teacher. And if their attention is not on the teacher, it's not because of the kid reading a book. Maybe they're struggling to understand what's going on, and that's why they're having trouble paying attention. So the focus needs to not be on that student reading. It needs to be on the students who are struggling. Find better ways to connect to them. Find things that they can grasp onto. Um, so inmates, 70% of inmates can't read above fourth grade level. That's a tragedy, and it's one of the reasons why libraries and reading programs are so big inside of prisons. And they do see a lot of success with inmates who do take up um, programs within those systems. Uh, Food stamp recipients, 75% of Americans who receive food stamps perform at the lowest two levels of literacy. Again, it's a class warfare sort of situation, and I would say that one of the things I have seen from people that I know who do have challenges with literacy, they reinforce that with their children. Unfortunately, saying that if I don't understand it, these people don't need to understand it because I'm doing just fine. Really, are you? Are you happy with everything you have? Do you feel like you could have any pursuit you want in life? Do you feel like you could reach for the stars and attain that if you just worked hard enough? Or are we on the same page that honestly your education levels, your understanding is such a problem? Good Lord. Um, but are we on the same page that your kids every single time? I swear to God, they're excited to see Wicked. Um, but yeah, are we on the same page that if you really really wanted to do something, you couldn't do it, and that if you want your kids to achieve their dreams, do you really think that the best way, guys? Yeah. So super loud. Anyway, if you want your kids to have those the potentials to achieve their dreams, whatever their dreams may be, are you really doing them a service by saying, "Hey, because I'm not really well educated, I have challenges with this that I'm gonna push those challenges onto them, that I'm gonna deny them those, the ability to have that education or to shit on that education and say, oh, you don't really need to understand that." That's a terrible thing to do to your kids. You should always encourage your kids to, seek the best and strive to do better. You have to understand where your kid is at. Don't say, "Oh, he's plenty smart. He can do this." When you understand 100% that he struggles with fundamental aspects of education, if it's basic math, if it's basic reading, if it's basic science, you need to challenge them. Challenge your kids to do better because they should want better. Um, and by that, I don't mean a specific career path is better than another specific career path. They should want what's best um, from themselves in any pursuit that they follow. So if they want to become a physicist, great. If they want to become like a livestock farmer or something like that, that's wonderful too. But you know what? Really well educated people and that do a lot of like raising cattle or have a lot of fields, and they have a great understanding of how a lot of things work, from climate to um, soil to agriculture to so many things. When they have greater education and understanding of it, when they can run the logistics of their mathematics and do their own finances, they are much more successful than people who just don't. So regardless if you think you know you are fine, you should always want your kids to be successful in any pursuit that they have, more successful than anything. They should have more tools in their toolbox than they are ever going to have to necessarily need. Anybody who's ever worked on something knows that I've got tools that I haven't used in 10 years, but I needed it once and I may need it again. I've known other people who needed those tools and I was able to help them out. So it's better to have access to those tools than to say, just no, we're fine where we're at. As long as I got a hammer, I can fix anything. Like, obviously not. There's still things you can't do without, all the other tools in the box. Um, so, you know, this is where we're at. America, when we're doing debates online, I will constantly challenge people on their sources. I will constantly challenge people to vet their sources or to look at the merit of the individuals that they're sourcing, even within trusted sites. You look at the author. Hopefully, they publish who the journalist or reporter or whoever it is, however you want to coin the term. Um, you have to look at who they are, and if it like an opinion piece or an editorial piece, those are allowed to just be, and unfortunately, a lot of mass media right now is 100% editorial and opinion pieces. Like it's crazy how much it isn't based off of actual just facts, unedited. Just this is the facts. This is just what it is. We're going to show you the whole thing from start to finish. 99% of mass media, on no matter where you're getting it from, is editorials and opinions. Just people, trying to represent skewed facts in a way that benefits them. And it's great when you have a specific messaging that you want to put out there, or to elevate certain people or whatever the case may be. You can absolutely do that really well doing that sort of thing. And the echo chambers, the people who want to hear those messages will absolutely clamor and applaud. And they'll spend whatever money to be told the things that they want to hear. So don't get me wrong, it's a very profitable way to run your business. However, it's not a genuine way to run your news business, because at that point it's not really news anymore. Now it's just opinion pieces. Now it's basically you're like a magazine who's just talking about how you want to hear about things in this light. We will give you things only in this light, but the real world doesn't exist in one small spectrum of light. It's a full light spectrum. That's how you see the beauty of everything, is you see everything in the full spectrum of light. And well, as far as our eyes can see anyway, obviously there's ultraviolet and infrared that we don't naturally see, that we can use tools to amplify and see, but naturally we don't. But I'm neither here nor there, sorry. We really have to look at things in the full detail. We have to get all of the information. We have to start being a lot less biased about it. And we have to be more honest about things. We can't get to a better place together as long as we allow ourselves to be just bathed with these echo chambers of it's not even really information. It's just opinions. Some of it is actually just, it's intentional disinformation. And disinformation is something where they give you information that's wrong, presented in a light like it's true, to help you, to help push you to a specific mental state. One of the things that concerns me, and it has concerned me for a long time, is just the direction of mass media and political leadership, where they're when they're so divisive. And I guess, like, originally I could understand it to a degree, because you want to say, this is the difference between me and the guy who's running against me. Obviously, people want to know what those differences are so that they can make a good decision based on how they feel about some of these issues. But it became way too much like a grade school class presidency run, where they can promise you anything underneath the sun, whether or not it can logically be delivered. And a lot of that's because people don't understand how government works, what the different, how Congress operates, how the Senate operates. They don't understand what powers the president does and does not have. They don't understand how the difference between federal and state law, or even state and civil laws within their own counties and cities. So many people, they just don't understand all of this whole system, this whole really big, complicated system. And so when you have people just promising you absolutely ludicrous things that they can't deliver on, they don't care. And it's evolved into this these big echo chambers of where nowadays 3/4 of what they say is just about why the other person is actually just pure evil. If you vote for this person, it's literally going to etch a pentagram into the ground. Satan himself will crack the earth and rise up through it, and it will be the beginning of the end of times, all because you've elected the person on the other side. And Americans, it's they want you to be divided amongst everybody else who just doesn't share the same opinion or doesn't have the same philosophical view, which is completely antithetical to what America is. the whole point of America is that everybody has not just freedom of speech, but freedom to just have their own ideas and thoughts and concepts, and that that's pretty groovy. That's what makes us a great nation, is that we can exist with all these different thought processes and all these differences of opinions, and everybody can have the freedom to pursue their life and be happy in the way that makes them happy, as long as it's not violating any federal laws, which typically are about preventing you from preventing other people from being happy, uh, doing harmful things, stuff like that. But you know, to draw lines and to try to say that everybody on the other side of this line here is a bad person. Don't talk to them about it. That's one thing that I hate, is when they say don't talk politics, don't talk faith, don't talk about this, don't talk about that, because people get upset. Yeah, people get upset because a lot of this has been slowly conditioned to the core identity of people. And if somebody's tying hatred or division into the core identity of somebody, if they're saying that to really be a good person, you have to hate people who don't have the same thoughts as you, who don't have the same philosophies as you, they're not necessarily doing something awful, but they're not part of this, so they're just bad people. Anybody who's telling you that is out to gain something from you. They're out to utilize you to further them. So that's something that you really need to pay attention to, because that's dangerous levels right there. And it's so wrong. It really is wrong. Anytime political leadership is telling you that you need to hate everybody on the other side of the fence is wrong. Anybody who's telling you that the uneducated masses are all people who live in this area or that area, and therefore they're on the other side of a political fence, is wrong. Or that people think that you're all the uneducated ones because you're on this side of the fence and they're all elitists, is wrong. That shit is just bull. It is not a widely believed concept by any means. Do I think a lot of people are given disinformation? Absolutely. Do I think a lot of it's by design? I know it is. Do I think a lot of it happens on the right? Fuck yeah. Do I think it happens on the left? Yes, it does. I know it does. It happens on both sides. There's a lot of division and there's a lot of disinformation that's sown into both sides. Do I think everything about Trump was witch hunting and disinformation, and he's actually a really good guy? No. Anybody who's followed Trump and his theatrics for any kind of time, you know exactly who he is. He hasn't changed who he is in his entire life. The guy was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. He broke so many codes and laws along the way. He's violated so many contracts along the way. He's been bankrupt and sued until he was purple, and not because he has a lot of money and people just wanted to try to get a settlement out of him. He's not the first rich guy to say that, and he won't be the last by a long shot. A lot of them do, and that doesn't make them right. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're wrong. I'm not going to say that some people aren't out to, you see people who get in accidents and stuff, and they're like, "Oh, how much money can I milk out of this?" Yeah, that shit happens. So I wouldn't say that people aren't, living some of those lawsuits maybe frivolously or fraudulently even. But yeah, by and large, the most of them are not. So we have to be honest. We really have to get to the place where we can really be 100% honest about things again. We need to be able to have real discussions about actual facts and get back to the groundwork. And if you're going to cite sources for facts, if they disagree with you in some part, you can't ignore that fact either. I like when I think something and I look for a source and I find things from the source and they're like, yeah, this is all true. And it's confirming a lot of what I thought. And then it adds in information that contradicts some of the things I thought. Now I'm like, holy shit, that's crazy. I didn't know that, or I wouldn't have guessed that, or that completely changes my view on something. It's hard to be flexible. I get that. It's hard to be flexible when you have these preconceived notions, and what you really want is to feel like you have a greater understanding, that you're just right. And if something contradicts you, you want to look for like why that can't possibly be. Like, no, I can't possibly be wrong. I know the things. I do know them in my heart of hearts. cue the Disney music. I know the things. Um, no, we're wrong. We get things wrong all the time. No matter how smart we are, no matter how much we know, everybody gets shit wrong. And um, to be honest with ourselves and to be able to become a greater person, we have to acknowledge that sometimes we're wrong and that's okay. All that's going to do is make us better anytime that happens. It's all it can do. So we, being honest with ourselves is so important. Being honest with one another is so important, and having these dialogues that they don't want us to have is so important. And I don't think that having these dialogues is going to be like, I talked today and fuck, Tom made some good points. I'm jumping over to the conservative side, or I'm jumping over to the liberal side. I don't think the talks are going to do that. That's not really the goal. The goal is to have people have as much information as possible, to be on the same reality as much as possible, to agree on what facts are genuinely facts and what bullshit is actually just 100% bullshit, and be able to have conversations at that level. Once we can be honest with each other, we can have real conversations, and we can stop hating one another just for small differences. Taking the temperature down in the country needs to be something that we're all looking to achieve. And as long as we're struggling to even comprehend the information, literacy rates and that's just literacy. Obviously, if we're looking at literacy being a root cause to a lot of things, math is a form of literacy. If you're in academic circles or around the right people, you'd hear the term mathematically literate. And all that means is that you have the ability to read mathematical problems and you understand how to solve them correctly. And yeah, a lot of people have difficulty with them. You see the dumb memes all the time online where they just write out a problem like 5 plus 11 minus 9 plus, and they just like rattle off a bunch of stuff straight in a row. And they're like, solve this. Bet you can't. And then they're like, well, if you knew PEMDAS or whatever the case may be. And it's like, no, I know math grammar. And math grammar says you wrote the problem incorrectly. If you were writing it as you would speak it, then this is how it's solved, because you're giving me an order of operation in how you're speaking it. When if it was written down correctly, you would still speak it this way, but when you wrote it down, it would actually look different because you're still solving it the correct way in the correct order, but it's written down grammatically correct on paper so that people understand the correct order that you want it to be solved in. So by writing it down incorrectly doesn't mean other people were wrong. It just means that you wrote it incorrectly. It's like writing a sentence all jacked up and going, figure out which order it all belongs in, so that and if you're really smart, you'll know. But the way that it's all written down could be 3 or 4 different ways that it should have been written, and they all have different meanings. It doesn't mean that somebody was wrong for interpreting it one way or not. It just means that you wrote the damn sentence incorrectly to convey the idea you want. So math, grammar, just grammar in writing is so important to getting across the correct message. Let's not pretend that writing something down incorrectly means other people are stupid for not remembering an order of operations based on your inability to write things correctly. Literacy matters. And obviously when you're talking about, people having challenges with reading comprehension or mathematical comprehension, those apply to the things that they would learn in higher grade levels. So when you're talking about like civics, when you're talking about sciences, when you're talking about chemistry, physics, you're talking about, trigonometry, you're talking about government, and a lot of that government stuff deals with older English terms and larger words, because a lot of it's done by people who have been doctors and lawyers for generations. So they're using much more legal jargon and much more I would say more traditional English on a lot of this stuff. It just confuses people. So how you solve the higher education problem is by solving the earlier education problem. When you disenfranchise kids and students so early on from their education by punishing them, whether or not they're successful and academically very good, and you punish them for being ahead of the rest of the class, or if they're struggling and they're just not getting the attention they need, or you're saying, if you don't learn it this way, I just can't help you. You're just a lost cause. No, or you're just dumb because you can't learn it this way. Not the case. Different people have different ways that their minds work, and they can absolutely understand things. They just need to have that information given to them in a way that's palatable for the way that their mind interprets it. So, yeah, people are dumb. Our school system sucks. Our school systems have been failing people for the longest time. And I want people to going forward. I guess my whole point here is that, well, we need to acknowledge when we're talking to people that they may not have the same level of comprehension as us. They may not understand all the things or have all the facts that we have. They may not be able to understand the sciences or whatever the case may be. It doesn't mean you should treat them as if they're just absolutely stupid or not give them the opportunity to try to understand that. Break it down for them. I'm not saying like, okay, little Bobby, let me break it down for you. You obviously can't understand. Let me get the crayons out and we'll get the sticker chart, and if you do a good job. Like, no, come on, man. Don't treat people horribly just because they don't understand something. Just try to break it down for them so that they can understand it. Give them the facts, give them the data. Obviously, I'm still a fighter. If somebody's if I'm going to break it down and I give them all the opportunities in the world to process the information, I'm there for any questions they want to ask. If they're going to come at it genuinely and be like, okay, well, what is this then? What are you talking about? What are you trying to say here? And we want to get into the conversation where we actually talk about it, and they understand it and they still want to stand by their point, or they just don't want to stand by their point. Yeah, I'm going to go toe to toe with them. If somebody's going to get personal, I'm going to fire back. Not personal, but I will be like, okay, well, obviously, if you're coming to this point with me, you're basically saying that you can't comprehend the information here. You can't debate the points, whatever the case may be, whatever reason there might be for that. I don't know. I don't know why you're not going back to the points, but this is the logical assumption that I think people looking over would make. You have two options here. You can either go back to the point, and we can go back to talking about the actual subject matter, the topic at hand. I don't care if it takes you, 5 hours, 10 hours, whatever, to try to understand this, to go look things up, to try to make heads or tails of the information, and to try to find a counterpoint or whatever the case may be. Or you just say, hey, man, I'm done with the conversation. Those would be better options than just going, well, I'm going to just move over to hurling personal insults, because all anybody else sees is, obviously, this guy doesn't have the ability to discuss this topic. He's completely lost it. He got called out on things. And the other guys, all you're doing is making someone like myself look like, okay, this guy's smart. He knows what he's talking about. This guy does not know what he's talking about. And he's a dick now, apparently, because he got busted in it and he just looks silly. I'm not out here to try to make people look silly. I'm trying to just convey facts. I'm trying to get information out there. I think that's what a lot of people need to do, is to try to get information out there. I think my suggestion for people who may struggle with some of that information is, you could even go into private messaging with people, ask them, hey, can I talk to you in private message real quick? A lot of people, as long as you're not going to be a dick about things, are going to be like, yeah, cool. Shoot me a private message. We can talk some in private message, and you can genuinely ask them shit, or you can say, hey, like on this thread, like, okay, give me some sources, give me some information about this. And, a lot of people who know shit, they're going to go and find the sources for you as quickly as possible, because they want to help you understand things. And they want to validate that they do understand the things too at the same time, because that's also seen as a challenge. Like, hey, you understand things? Oh yeah? Prove to me you understand these things. It sounds like you understand things, but people can sound like they understand things pretty easy. Go give me some shit to impress me that you understand these things. So, you got that going on. It's important to have all of that. And I don't know, so don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to private message. Don't be afraid to take your time to have the conversation. All of those things are absolutely fine. They're absolutely welcome by almost anybody who wants to have a genuine debate. I am a person who loves a genuine debate. I'm not looking to get into shouting matches or get into physical altercations or any of that nonsense. I'm not here to try to make other people look or feel stupid. I know it can be a byproduct when somebody says things you don't understand. Um, Checks your ego a little bit, and it definitely makes you feel bad sometimes when you don't understand things other people understand. Um, you know, I was not a big sports guy all my life. Um, it's not that I couldn't play them. It's never been something that I loved or cared a whole ton about. So, that's just where I'm at on that. I, when people would talk about sports or something, sometimes I would feel dumb. And, be like, people would sometimes treat me worse for it. And yeah, I would feel bad about it. But at the same time, I went, hey, I really don't care about sports. It's not my bag, it's not my interest. It doesn't make me a greater or lesser person. If I want to have a greater conversation with this person, um, maybe I'd have to go learn about sports or ask about this. And if I'm really interested in having a conversation with that person, then yeah, I ask about it. I say, hey, like, um, I want to know about it. Like, teach me about this so that I can have a conversation with you about it. I had to learn about NASCAR that way. I learned more about football when I was younger that way, and I've learned more about other things. From other people that way as my life has gone on, because I want to engage those people um, with things that they have an interest in. So when you're debating and you don't understand something, don't feel uh, like somebody's trying to chastise you or treat you like you're less than, just because they're saying things that maybe you don't understand, or using words that you don't understand, or and don't be afraid to say, hey man, I didn't know this. I actually get I think this is cool. I watch a lot of debates online, and some of these people get very upset, but some people will 100% just be like, hey, I didn't know this. Like, and they'll ask questions and they'll get more information. And they're like, okay, cool. Like, and they're not switching their opinion right away, but it's information that they didn't have. And they're open to the idea that they didn't have all the information. And they're like, well, I'm going to go look this up later on. Now I have a lot more information to think about, a lot more things to think about. And it's not that they're going to necessarily change a stance per se. People who think abortion is bad morally are still going to think abortion is bad morally. I don't think any amount of information is going to change whether or not somebody thinks something that they have a moral feeling or spiritual feeling, whatever the case may be, about something. They're not going to be like, oh, well, the information here came out and it proves these points. I'm just going to not feel the way I feel anymore. Absolutely, that's not going to be the case, and I don't think anybody expects that to be the case. But I do think that with objectivity, they're saying, hey, you may not agree morally with it, but now maybe you can understand morally where other people are standing, and that they're not terrible people for having their feelings about it either. Um, I don't think people who are pro-life are evil people for wanting pro-life and not agreeing with abortion at any level. I think if people just don't think abortion should ever happen, I don't agree with that, but I don't think that those people are either are wrong to have those feelings. I don't think those people are wrong to. I don't think those people are evil or less than because they have those feelings. I would challenge them to try to look at, and I do. I challenge them to look at things through the lens of other people's lives and eyes, because when you're looking at things at a policy level, where you're talking about making laws, making decisions across the entire country, you have to be objective in that. You have to actually look at yourself and go, okay, I can make that choice for me, but when it comes to a law, that's making choices for everybody and removing their options, removing any choices that they have. So I need to make choices for me that are moral for me, but at the same time, to what end? How far can I take that on a legal level where it's not okay for me to make a choice anymore beyond a point for other people? And that's what a lot of these laws are trying to do. They're trying to find a happy medium between your specific personal morals and feelings and what's right to infringe upon or to make decisions for others based on their personal morals, feelings, interactions, and experiences. That's what federal law is all about. It really tries not to infringe too much on other people based on what your personal feelings are, even if it's a whole bunch of you that feel a specific way. Especially when you're bringing matters of like your personal like faiths and stuff into it. because at that point now you're basing things off of a faith and saying that we need to make laws on a national level based on a majority's faith, and that's not a good way to conduct business. Unfortunately, in America, we are not a faith based nation, meaning that our laws and our media and everything else, they're not controlled by any faith organization. There's no state religion in America. Um, the country does not endorse one specific religion or give one more autonomy or authority than any other. It recognizes the autonomy and authority of all religions for people to choose their religions and to practice their own individual religions, but not to utilize that to govern. Um, so it's not to say that you can't be a governor or a congressman or a board supervisor in a county or whatever the case may be, and have your personal faith influence how you see things and how you form opinions on things to do with legislation. That absolutely is the case. It should be the case, but you have to also acknowledge other people's rights and authority and the limitations of where that faith can take you as far as legislation goes. So it's really important to acknowledge all of those things. I don't know, man. Like, I just, when we see that people are stagnating in their education at such a low level, and um, people just want to fight at that level. They want to just. Let's see, where's that post I recently had that Tommy comment? Yeah. For the, all right, so this is one of the things I was talking about. A lot of people in MAGA don't know where a lot of the MAGA movement comes from. They don't know where a lot of the policies that are guiding the Make America Great Again movement comes from. They didn't even know where the phrase itself comes from. It all comes from the original Heritage Foundation book. For the most part, it wasn't a project. It was the Mandate for Leadership that it was 1981, I believe it was published. Reagan loved it, passed it around his administration. I mentioned in here, he was just such a fan of the work. They, in Reagan's 8 years, passed 60% of over 3,000 pages worth of discussion on policies. How many individual policies were in there, I don't specifically know. So how many that would amount to, I couldn't say specifically. Um, so when people say like Project 2025 isn't that play, it's just a think tank, or that Trump doesn't know anything about Project 2025 or the Heritage Foundation, they worked with him in 2016 personally. He had people from the Heritage Foundation working with him specifically and in his cabinet and his staff. So he absolutely does know about them. He does know it. Make America Great Again was a phrase used by Reagan that he pulled out of the Mandate for Leadership the Heritage Foundation released in the 80s. So anytime you're seeing MAGA or using the term MAGA or wearing anything MAGA, that is 100% the Heritage Foundation. That is 100% derivative of Project 2025 from back in the day. Back before when they actually called the 2017 plans Project 2016. So, like, none of this is new. None of this is new stuff. This is all the Heritage Foundation has been tied to very, very closely tied to all conservative legislatures and presidents going back 40 years now. So this isn't new. This isn't different. And unfortunately, a lot of people who support MAGA by its name don't know all of the details of what MAGA, all the policies that are intrinsic and tied to it. And that was kind of my point, is that, um, just because you don't know as a supporter what's all in this doesn't mean that the plan's not true, doesn't mean that that's not what it represents. It just means that when you signed up, you just didn't have that information available to you. Um, uh, and this should concern a lot of the MAGA or conservative supporters, because the plans that are in Project 2025 and that were started, some of them during 2016 at a smaller level. So I don't think Donald Trump thought he was going to win. I really don't think Donald Trump thought he was going to be able to even successfully pull off a lot of that. He thought there was more checks and balances, and that the system was not going to allow him to do those things. Um, but obviously, it absolutely did. And I think he has a lot more courage and faith in his ability to just get things taken care of now. So, you know, it just needs to be more of a concern. People don't know what's in that book, and a lot of it is very, very alarming, and will do a lot of dangerous things to our country. The idea of being isolationist, I'll talk about this at another point, but isolationism is not something that we can successfully pull off in America. We don't have in America. We don't have the resources. We don't have um, the, and I mean the raw resources. We have some raw resources here, but we don't have the raw resources that we need to do all of this stuff. A lot of chip manufacturing is done overseas. If we were even going to try to do it here in America, we would still have to get the raw resources imported. And obviously, if we were going to do that, what would be the interest in those other companies overseas sending us out those materials and not charging us an absolute fortune for that sort of stuff? Meaning that anything that we built with it would cost an absolute friggin' fortune. We can't become isolationist. It's going to devastate us here for our production costs. And then anybody who relied on exporting their stuff is going to have their markets absolutely destroyed. Because if you think that a lot of these other countries can't get something from somewhere else, you're wrong. All you're going to do is open up markets in the rest of the world for global trade, and make the rest of the world a greater economic force globally um, than they are now by far. So it's important to understand and know all these things. So I will continue to talk about a lot of the stuff going forward. Uh, but yeah, there's so much in the education system that needs to be rectified, needs to be fixed. Uh, Anago recently, they recently had a much better mark. I think they went up 89 points, but they're still like 289th out of the state as far as school. So there's obviously still a long ways to go. We were near the bottom of the list. So while going up 89 points, 89 steps or whatever on the list is great, it really is. There's so much more room to go. There's so much. There's no reason to stop at all, or to think that this is just the level of success we need to achieve, and we need to achieve no more. We absolutely do need to achieve more. We can't become complacent or let our joy stop us from pursuing, uh, reaching ever higher. All right, that's all I got for you guys for today. I'm gonna go out to karaoke tonight and try to sing some songs and see what my throat and my diaphragm can handle tonight. It doesn't feel like it's going to be too much, but we'll see when we get there. Maybe a little whiskey will help. Um, y'all have a good Thanksgiving, and I will come back on 29th probably. So Friday, maybe we'll see. We'll see. The kids are going to be home. If they're going to be loud, I don't want to do that to them, but we'll see. You guys all have a good one.